All right, so here's kind of our first lesson. It's some review of what we did before you guys left for that long spring break there. We're going to talk about percent proportion and percent equation. We're going to use these formulas coming up to calculate tax, tip, markup, things like commission, discount, and sale price. So different things that we're going to use this for. So kind of want to review before we get to those things in the upcoming weeks. So the great thing about these videos, guys, is if you feel like it's going too fast or feel like you don't understand something, you can always pause it. You can always go back and kind of re-watch something that you didn't understand, and then you can go catch back up to where you were. So if you ever feel the need, you might want to grab a piece of paper right now and pause the video, grab a piece of paper and a calculator so you can kind of follow along and kind of do some calculations before I even do them to kind of check yourself as we're going. So, all right, percent proportion we talked about before spring break. That is part over whole equal to percent over 100. And from that point, we have two fractions equal to each other. So we cross multiply and then solve for our missing variable. Percent equation is whole times percent equal to part. The one thing you got to remember with percent equation is you have to write that percent. It's got to be written as a decimal. So it's got to be written as a decimal. And when you do that, you have to realize too that at the end, sometimes you have to turn that back in from a decimal to a percent. So just kind of remember, okay, if I'm going from a percent to a decimal, I divide by 100, or I move the decimal place 2 places to the left. If I'm going from a decimal to a percent, I multiply by 100, I move the decimal place 2 places to the right. We also kind of talked about over here on the left side of your screen, is and of. We talked about sometimes in word problems, the words is and of are in there, and they kind of give us a hint of what missing piece we're missing for. Is normally almost always refers to the part, and of normally almost always refers to the whole. So let's try some of this right here, this question below. So this question below says 20% of what number is 24. If you feel like you understand this and you know how to solve this, might be a good time to pause the video and kind of write out how you would solve this, set up your percent proportion, set up your percent equation, and then solve. Remember, you don't have to use percent proportion and equation. Just pick which one you feel most comfortable with, you feel like you can utilize the best, and use that formula to solve problems like this. So the first thing that I like to do is I like to write out to the side my part, my whole, and my percent. So then I have 20% of what number is 24? Well, 20%, this first part right here tells me, well, there's my percent. So I'm just going to write 20 next to my percent, so I know what my percent is now. Of what number? Of normally refers to my whole. Well, what number? Well, I don't know what number that is. So what number is my x? That's what I'm looking for. That's my unknown variable. So is 24, is refers to my part, so now I have my part of 24. I'm going to show both ways here, percent proportion and percent equation. Again, you guys just choose which way you feel most comfortable with. So I'll do percent proportion here first on the left side. Percent proportion is part over whole, so I have 24 over x equal to my percent, which is 20, so 20 over 100. That's why I like to write these out to the side, to the left here, because then I'm just plugging in. Okay, I have my whole, that's my W, plugging in my part, that's my P, and I have my percent, that's my 20. And so then I'm just plugging things in, and then I can solve pretty easily. From this point, we cross multiply. Remember, that's where we take the denominator of one fraction multiplied by the numerator of the other fraction, or the top times the bottom. So 20 times x gives me 20x. Equal to 24 times 100, 2,400. 20 is multiplying times the x, so I have to divide 20 by each side to get it to cancel out on that side, because 20 divided by 20 is 1. So then I have x equals, and you have your calculator right there, 2,400 divided by 20 gives me 120. All right, now I'm going to use percent equation, just showing you that there's two different ways to get to the same answer. Again, choose whichever one you're most comfortable with. So I have my whole, which is x, times my percent. Now here's the thing, that's 20%. I don't just plug in 20 there, I have to change that to a decimal. So I have to divide 20 divided by 100. Or another way you might say it is, okay, over here I'm going to move my decimal place, move my decimal place 2 places to the left. So it's 2/10. 2/10 equal to my part, which is 24. This is 2/10 x equal to 24. 2/10 is multiplying times the x, so to get that 2/10 to the other side, I have to undo multiplication, which is division. Those cancel out. X equals, if I take 24 divided by 2/10 in my calculator, I get 120. Again, if you feel like I need a little more practice, I want to go back through that, pause the video, go back, try that one again. Below here are some extra problems that if you feel like you need some more practice, this would be a great time to pause the video, try these 3 on a separate sheet of paper, and then you can play the video and I'll go ahead and solve these. So at this time, go ahead and pause the video and try these 3 on a separate sheet of paper. All right, now that you've tried these 3, let's go ahead and solve them. So I have my part, my whole, my percent. I'm going to go ahead and do that on all 3 of these here. It just helps remind me when I'm solving these, okay, this is how I need to set it up. If I can establish the missing pieces from the word problem, then it should be easier for me to solve. All right, so 12.5% of what number is 14? Doing that first one there in the top left. So 12.5%, that's my percent I'm looking for. Of what number? Of means my whole what number? I don't know what number that is, so I'm just going to use x is 14. That's my part. I'm going to go ahead and use percent equation here. Again, you could use percent proportion, percent equation. I'm just going to show one method of solving it. So percent equation says whole times percent. So whole times my percent. But when I'm using percent equation, I have to change that to a decimal. So I'm going to move that decimal place 2 places to the left. And so I have 125 thousandths times x equal to my part, which is 14. So 125 thousandths times x is equal to 14. 125 thousandths is multiplying times the x. So I need to divide each side by 125 thousandths to get that to cancel. X equals, if I take 14 divided by 125 thousandths in my calculator, find that I get 112. All right, so hopefully you're 1 for 1. Let's go ahead and try the next one. What percent of 112 and 5/10 is 9? So what percent? Ooh, I'm looking for my percent here. So that's my x of 112 and 5/10. Of tells me that's my whole. My part is 9. I'm going to go ahead and use percent proportion here. So part over whole, so 9 over 112 and 5/10 equal to my percent over 100, which is x over 100. Again, cross multiply. So when I cross multiply here, I get x times 112 and 5/10. So that's just 112 and 5/10 x. 9 times 100 is 900. Divide each side by 112 5/10. Type that in your calculator, or you can do that in your head. You get x equals 8. Now, is it x equals 8 just a number, or am I looking for something specific here? Well, if I go back to my problem here, I'm looking for my percent. So it's not just x equals 8, it's x equals, and it's an 8% is my answer. 8% is your answer here. If you use percent equation, you probably got to the end, and I'm going to go up here so you can kind of see what I'm doing here. You probably got to the end, and you got a decimal that looks something like that. Well, if you use percent equation, you got to remember, I got to change that back to a percent. To do that, I need to multiply by 100 or move the decimal place 2 places to the right. So I get 8, again, 8%. All right, let's go ahead and go to the last one right here. What number is 90% of 110? So my parts, what number? I don't know what that is yet. I'm going to keep going here. Is 90%? Well, is tells me this 90% should be my part, but that doesn't make sense. It's got a percent sign. That's got to be my percent. So that's 90 of 110. So of tells me that's my whole, so 110 is my whole. Okay, I'm looking for my part here. So what number is was referring to what number, which is x. I'm going to use percent proportion here. So part over whole equals percent over 100. Cross multiply, get 100x. 100x equal to 90 times 110. You get 9,900. Divide each side by 100. X equals 99. Is it just 99 or am I looking for percent? I go back. Well, I'm looking for my part, so my answer is just x equals 99. All right. So at this point, you can go ahead and X off the video, and you can go down and answer the questions on the Google form below. And so go ahead and do that, and you'll get your feedback right away.